All right, so I asked ChatGPT to write a joke, starting with three drunk copywriters walk into a bar. And you know what? It's not a very good joke, and I'll tell it to you in just a minute, but it is so much better than what AI was doing, I don't know, about a year ago or so when Netflix put out on their YouTube channel, Netflix is a Joke, the first stand-up comedy special written by AI. It's a complete transformation from that, because even though it's a bad joke, it's actually a joke that, you know, a human being might tell and think is funny. It's better than a lot of jokes that I would actually tell. And so we'll check that out. And then we're going to talk about Bar-Stool Conversations, which really has nothing to do with ChatGPT writing jokes. But for whatever reason, I thought it would be fun to figure out what ChatGPT would say if I told it to tell me a joke about three drunk copywriters walking into a bar. So, three drunk copywriters walk into a bar. The bartender asks, "What can I get you guys?" The first copywriter, barely holding himself upright, slurs, "A margarita on the rocks with a splash of inspiration." The second copywriter chimes in, "And I'll have a pint of beer with a twist of creativity." The third copywriter, staring blankly at the counter, finally says, I can't decide. I'm still waiting for client feedback." All right, but that's not the point of this episode. The point of this episode is actually a Bar-Stool Conversations. It's a lesson that I associate with John Carlton. I think maybe it came from Gary Halbert before him. Either way, it's a pretty darn good lesson in your copywriting voice, in the tones that you're going to use when you're talking to your clients through your copy. Now, I want to actually illustrate this before we get into, you know, the teaching part of it. So a few years back, I was working with this financial publisher, and I went to a big conference that they were putting on with all these great investing minds, economics minds, all of that, and showed up at their like luxury hotel where they were hosting this thing. And I went to this little place in the lobby of the hotel. Seemed kind of interesting. It was like a classic 1950s Hamburger Joint, right? Just off the lobby of the hotel. And I decided to sit down. They had a little bar there. I decided to sit down at the bar and have a hamburger for the night before the event started. And in walks the economist for, like, this is the lead economist for the company. And he actually knows me. We've chatted online a few times, had some phone calls. So he sits down next to me. We start eating together, and we have this 2-hour conversation about the markets, about politics, about investing, about, you know, my background, about his background, about all of this, right? And there were times where we slipped into some fairly complex ideas, complex conversations, you know, things like the origins of inflation and I don't know, all sorts of different interesting topics and conversations. And all the while through, it just felt like a very friendly, low-key, casual conversation between friends. And for the most part, you didn't hear a bunch of economics jargon. It didn't sound like a quarterly report from some company, or like some report put out by the Federal Reserve or something like that. It wasn't any of that. It was just a low-key casual conversation between two people who happen to have decent knowledge of the topic. In this case, it was investing and economics and all that good stuff. And that style of conversation, you know, if one of us was trying to persuade the other one of something, that style of conversation is perfect for what you want to do for copywriting. Now, in our case, I don't remember, but I don't think we were even having beers or anything like that. It doesn't have to be a beer or a bar where alcohol is served, right? This is about just that kind of casual conversation that might take place. And if it's a B2B setting, right, like selling business to business, might take place in a conference, right? It might take place. I've been to all sorts of conferences. I've been to copywriting conferences, IT conferences, investing conferences. It might take place in the bar of a conference, right? Or if it is a more consumer type product, it might take place in a bar or a coffee shop or whatever. The whole point is imagine yourself in this casual setting. In our case, it was this hamburger joint inside the lobby of the hotel. Imagine yourself in this casual setting and you're having these conversations with whoever it is, right? Maybe it's you speaking to the prospect, or maybe it's the expert speaking, like whatever. The whole point is that level of conversationality is what you're looking for here. And so getting to the formal lesson, that a huge hat tip to John Carlton. And like I said, I think this came from Gary Halbert before him. He called it the Bar-Stool Conversation, right? You want to be inspired by having a barstool conversation with someone who is an expert on whatever your topic is, whatever your area of interest is, right? You want to have, if it's golf, maybe you're having a barstool conversation with some golf pro. If it's health related, it's barstool conversation with some health person, right? Pick your topic, right? It's about having that casual conversation with a subject matter expert and imagining what's the level of conversation that goes on there. It's very casual. It's very laid back. It's relaxed. The language choice is going to be much more casual, less jargon filled. It's going to definitely not be academic language. It's, even academics, when you get them in a bar, they're not speaking in academic language. They may have a slightly different language in their barstool conversation than like a coal miner, right? But still fundamentally, they're not speaking the way that they write in academic papers. Also, the tonality is going to be much more friendly, much more informal. It's going to be very different than someone trying to present themselves in a formal context. Or even like, imagine the difference between, like, I've hung out at a copywriting conference with, like, I'm thinking Mark Ford, Drayton Bird. I'm thinking so many different actually people who've spoken at AWAI or Titans of Direct Response, like hanging out with those people after hours at these different conferences. The way that they approach the conversation feels so much different than if they are on stage even, right? Or presenting more formally in a plan presentation, right? It just feels very different. And so if you're going to write barstool style copywriting, which I strongly recommend you do if you want to engage your readers in a way that makes a lot of sense, one major tip is just tell a bunch of stories. You're looking for stories because that's how people tend to engage in that context, and it tends to be more engaging and interesting to your reader or your prospect, right? 5th to 7th grade readability, you can pop your copy into all sorts of different readability tools that are going to tell you what the grade level of readability is. I used to take pride when I was writing academic papers at writing like 10th, 11th, 12th grade and well beyond, right? When I was in college, like I thought it was some virtue to write something at like 18th grade readability level, but that stuff it's just thick. It's unreadable, and you're much better off writing in a way that everybody understands it. And so aim for like a 5th to 7th grade readability level, minimal jargon, jargon being specific language around the expertise or maybe the technology. You do benefit from using a little bit of jargon, just enough to convey expertise in the subject matter area. If you're using familiar jargon words in a way that is correct and that resonates with your audience, that they're familiar with it, it's going to increase your perceived expertise, right? It's going to increase your credibility. But you don't want to go over their head with your word choices and anything that's not 100% obvious jargon, and lean towards doing this as opposed to not. Anything that's not 100% obvious gets a definition. So when I talk about conversion rates, and if I say we're aiming to increase conversion rates, the percentage of people who actually go to your website and then buy something, that's a definition, right? Because I'm defining it, but at the same time, I'm making it feel like you already know the definition, right? So I'm not belittling you if you don't know the definition already, but at the same time, I'm popping the definition in there in a way that almost flies under the radar that I'm defining the jargon word, right? And then just keep that casual, loose style. But I will say, one major difference between if you were to transcribe a Bar-Stool conversation and good copy, one major difference between those two is that there should be tight editing in the good copy. So good copy should have a deep structure. It should really be moving the sales process forward as you go, even though the language is loose and the conversation does not feel overly like uptight, we'll say. It is designed to move someone quickly from reading the headline all the way up through pulling out their credit card and making a purchase. My call to action for you in this episode is to ask yourself, how can you use this? Do you have some copy you need to go back and edit to make it feel more casual like this? Or how are you going to use it going forward? You can certainly leave a comment and let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you get more content like this delivered to you. And if you'd like to check out my flagship copywriting course, you can still get that as part of BTMSinsiders membership, where you pay one low fee, you get instant streaming access to my entire catalog of copywriting and marketing courses. It's called High Velocity Copywriting. The links are in the description to High Velocity Copywriting and to BTMSinsiders. I'm Roy Furr. This is Breakthrough Marketing Secrets, and I will catch you again in the next episode. See you soon. Bye. Thank you once again for tuning in to this daily episode of Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. Remember, check out the links with this episode for even more value. Now make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, and engage in every way you can to keep this show going and growing and delivering daily value to you. I'll catch you soon for your next big breakthrough.